Most people don't fall apart because change is hard. They fall apart because no one taught them how to bend before life breaks them. If you've ever looked in the mirror and whispered, "I can't keep doing this," but you don't know what else to do, this video is for you. Because no one talks about the quiet panic of realizing the world is shifting and you're still using an old map. This isn't just stress. It's unpreparedness grief, mourning the life, the skills, the rhythm that no longer works. You're not falling behind. You're adapting in a world that keeps flipping the rules mid-game. Of course, you're questioning your next step. You're living in an era where entire careers become irrelevant in 18 months. That's not your fault. That's our new reality. It took me years to realize I wasn't afraid of change. I was afraid of becoming unrecognizable to myself in the process. We're expected to evolve, produce, be emotionally available, learn tech at the speed of light, and somehow stay sane. At first, I thought I lacked motivation. Now I know I lacked a model for what healthy, resilient change looks like. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be flexible. Part 2, emotional clarity plus setup. This isn't a productivity pep talk. This is a reset for your nervous system, your mindset, and your future. I call it agility debt, when you've spent so long resisting change that every shift feels like a crisis. This isn't just procrastination. It's your brain trying to survive a world that keeps asking you to rewire every 6 months. You're not behind, you're becoming aware, and awareness is the first step toward agility. Part 3, the real reason. Change feels so overwhelming. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was wired to do, avoid the unknown. But you were also built to adapt. Pause for a second. What's one area in your life where you've been clinging to certainty out of fear, not alignment? Write this down. What am I avoiding simply because I don't have a plan for the alternative? Take a breath. What if you're not the problem? Your outdated expectations are. Adapting doesn't happen in straight lines. It comes in loops. Fear, try, fail, adjust. That's the rhythm of real growth.
Effective leaders approach negative thoughts and feelings in a mindful, values-driven, and productive way by developing a powerful skill called emotional agility. This ability to manage one's thoughts and feelings can help people alleviate stress, reduce errors, become more innovative, and improve job performance. Here are 4 practices to help you develop emotional agility. First, recognize patterns in your thoughts and feelings so you can tell when you're hooked on them. It's hard to do, but there are certain telltale signs. One is that your thinking becomes rigid and repetitive. Another is that the story your mind is telling you seems like one you've heard before, like a rerun of some past experience. Second, label your thoughts and emotions. Just as you call a spade, call a thought, and an emotion. Labeling them allows you to see your thoughts and feelings for what they are, transient sources of data that may or may not be accurate or helpful. Humans are able to take this helicopter view of their own experiences, and research shows that this simple practice not only improves behavior and well-being, but also promotes beneficial biological changes in the brain and at the cellular level. Then, accept your thoughts and emotions instead of resisting them. This allows you to take productive action. Respond to your ideas and emotions with an open attitude, paying attention to them and letting yourself experience them. They may be signaling that something important is at stake. When you're feeling hooked, take 10 deep breaths and notice what's happening in the moment. This can bring relief, but it won't necessarily make you feel good. In fact, you may realize just how upset you really are. The important thing is to show yourself and others around you some compassion and examine the reality of the situation. And finally, act on your values so you can begin to unhook yourself from your difficult thoughts and emotions. By doing so, you expand your choices and increase your ability to act in a way that aligns with your values. Leaders need to focus on the concept of workability. Is your response going to serve your organization in the long term and take you toward being the leader you most want to be? The mind's thought stream flows endlessly, and emotions change like the weather. But values can be called on at any time, in any situation. It's impossible to block out difficult thoughts and emotions. Effective leaders are mindful of their inner experiences, but not caught in them. They know how to free up their internal resources and commit to actions that align with their values.
Part 4, cognitive flexibility. Train your mind to pivot. The science. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to shift thinking patterns, adapt your beliefs, and see new possibilities without panicking. This is where neuroplasticity comes in, your brain's ability to rewire itself. Even in adulthood, you can train your brain to pivot instead of freeze. The challenge: most of us weren't taught to question our mental default settings. We cling to how it's always been because repetition feels safe. But repetition without reflection becomes stagnation. You resist, you get anxious, you avoid, you feel stuck, you blame yourself. Let's interrupt that. Try this. Ask, what else could be true? Or what perspective haven't I tried yet? This isn't about toxic positivity. It's about possibility. You're not locking yourself into one narrative. You're playing with options. Comment below, what's one belief you've outgrown but still catch yourself returning to when things get hard? Part 5, emotional agility, stretching without snapping. Most people don't lack discipline. They're just drowning in unprocessed emotions that no one gave them permission to name. This isn't laziness, it's emotional shutdown.
If you are like most people, there is a gap between the person you are and the person you wish to be. There are little things you think you should do and big things you ought to achieve. From working out regularly, eating healthily, learning a language, working on your novel, reading more, or simply actually doing your hobby instead of browsing Reddit. But it sometimes feels that to achieve your goals, you have to become a different person. Someone who is consistent, puts in more effort, has discipline and willpower. Maybe you've tried your hardest to be like that, and it worked for a while, until you find yourself slipping back into your old ways. In the end, you always seem to fail, and with every failed attempt, you become more and more frustrated and annoyed with yourself.
Your body's way of saying too much, too fast, too often. Of course you're tense. Your nervous system has been pinging for years, responding to instability, change, and pressure with no release valve. We don't adapt well because we weren't raised to feel safely. And if you can't feel safely, you can't flex emotionally. Emotional intelligence and the nervous system science shows that emotional intelligence, your ability to name, process, and regulate emotions, predicts adaptability better than raw talent. Studies confirm that those high in emotional awareness are more resilient in careers, parenting, relationships, every arena where change shows up uninvited. We've been taught that emotions get in the way of logic, but the truth is, emotions are your logic's fuel. Regulate the emotion. Emotional range, Acker's emotional agility. Can you sit with anger and curiosity, with grief and hope? Stretch your tolerance like a muscle through journaling, reflection, mindfulness, and safe expression. What's the emotion you've been suppressing to survive change? Write it down. Then ask, what would it look like to honor this emotion instead of avoid it? Part 6, identity fluidity, you're allowed to evolve. No one talks about how disorienting it feels to outgrow a version of yourself others still expect. That's not confusion. That's identity friction, the tension between who you were and who you're becoming. I know that friction. I've stayed in roles, relationships, and routines long after they expired because I didn't know who I'd be without them. But eventually I realized staying the same wasn't loyalty. It was fear in disguise. Let go of static identity adaptability requires identity fluidity, the capacity to evolve how you see yourself. You're not just a mom or just a project manager or just a creative. You're a system of transferable skills, an emotional ecosystem, a work in progress. Like software, you're meant to update. And like muscles, your sense of self needs resistance to grow. Consistency isn't always courage. Sometimes it's just comfort in costume. So ask yourself, what identity are you protecting at the expense of who you're becoming? The fact that you're still watching this means you already feel the shift, and that means you're not stuck, you're shifting. Part 7, creative adaptation, learning to think like water. Most of the world's systems were built to reward rigidity, but the future will belong to those who know how to flow. What is creative adaptability? Creative problem solving is what keeps us alive during change. It's your ability to ask what else could work instead of collapsing when plan A fails. The most adaptable people are rarely the most talented. They're the most curious. Adapting in the age of AI is rewriting the rules of every industry. And the truth is, many jobs will disappear, but even more will transform. Your goal isn't to compete with machines, it's to become more human. They say AI will replace you, but the real threat, refusing to evolve, will. Use AI to amplify your impact, not define your identity. Learn the tools, ask better questions, combine your emotional intelligence with emerging tech, and you become unreplaceable. Rewire your brain with micro experiments. Creative agility grows through experiments, not leaps. Try new tools, join new rooms, ask what if more often than what now. The more micro pivots you test, the more future-proof your brain becomes. Where are you trying to force an old method to solve a new challenge? Ask yourself, what's the smallest creative risk I can take this week to increase my flexibility? Part 8, lifelong learning and pivot power, reinvention as a way of life. Most people don't burn out from doing too much. They burn out from repeating what no longer fits on autopilot. That fog you feel, it's not confusion, it's clarity starvation, your brain craving new input and new identity. Rewiring the brain through continuous learning. The most adaptable people don't wait for motivation. They build curiosity into their week like a ritual. Neuroscience confirms the more you learn, the more your brain becomes wired to learn. You literally grow new pathways with every new skill, no matter your age. I used to think reinvention was for midlife crises and tech bros. Now I know it's a sacred rhythm. Shed, learn, shift, emerge. I wasn't flaky, I was evolving. You're not lost, you're learning the next layer of yourself. At age 81, Masako Wakamiya taught herself to code. She didn't wait for the world to cater to her. She created an app for seniors herself. At 81, not because she had time, because she had a need and the belief that it wasn't too late. You're not too late, you're right on time for your next assignment. The Micro Pivot Path Mini Strategy. 1. Schedule 1 hour a week to learn something that intimidates you. Mini Strategy. 2. Start one project where failure won't wreck you, just teach you. Mini Strategy 3. Ask, if I weren't afraid, what would I try this month? These aren't productivity hacks, they're identity stretchers. What's the part of you that's been begging to grow but keeps getting told, not now? Pause. What if now is the perfect time? Part 9. The change you've been waiting for is you. You wouldn't still be watching if you weren't ready to move differently, think differently, be different. We walk through brain wiring, emotional agility, creative problem solving, and identity stretch. Now here's what you take with you. Final reframes to carry forward. You are not too late, you are not too fixed, you are not too behind, you are in process, you are in motion, and that motion is your power. The world doesn't need you to have a plan. It needs you to have elasticity, because no matter what shifts next, your ability to stretch, recalibrate, and move again is your survival skill. Drop in the comments what's one small change you're making this week that stretches your adaptability. If you know what needs to change, promise yourself you'll take one tiny action before this day ends, just one, then let it compound. If this resonated, my next video is all about emotional intelligence and how it rewires your career, your parenting, and your relationships. Watch that next. It's your next growth edge. You don't need to have all the answers to start. You just need to stay willing. Change isn't coming, it's already here. But the tools to meet it, they're already in you. Subscribe if you're building emotional intelligence, like if you're ready to evolve. Share this with someone who's been resisting their next chapter.